That's right. This is the Pregame Engineers Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 33 for Friday, February 5th, 2016. I wrote 2015. Good thing I fixed that one just now. Called myself out on it. But I am Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace here with Pregame Engineer Andrew Sherwin in the PETM Podcast Studio. Back in action. We got our producer, the Frizz11, doing the live tweeting and everything. So it's good to be back in the saddle, man. How about this?
I cannot believe that we are already on episode 33. Hashtag Daytona Day. And no, this is so cool to be back in the studio and get to talk to you. We took as much time off as we probably have taken so far.
Well, it's been like 2 weeks now, right?
Almost 2 full weeks.
Almost 2 full weeks. And, man, I've been jonesing, I tell you what, because it's all my fault. I've been traveling this whole time. I was in Israel.
Sure.
Yeah, right. I was in Israel for a week, then D.C. for a week, and finally back right here. I got to tell you though, I'm sitting in Jerusalem in my hotel room, and I'm sitting there because I'm jet lagged and everything, and I'm lying wide awake, and I'm sitting there going, I'm 6,000 miles away from. If you were to take me and turn me into a dart and throw me 6,000 miles, I want to land in this 1 square yard area right here and do the PTM podcast, dadgummit.
No kidding. I've been itching because we have so many things that have gone on. Now, the closer we get to the actual race and the start of the season, the more stuff is happening. And then, as we'll get to later, you have this random thing happen that makes headline news in NASCAR. Now we got to talk about that too. So
for sure. So before we get to that, you've actually got us. Well, first off, I didn't even write it down. What you drinking, man?
Oh, well, I'm drinking none other than the most interesting German Mexican lager there's ever been.
That is interesting. You look very.
And it's a bomber too.
Right, for sure. It's become kind of a tradition of ours. I'm drinking the same thing, a bomber of Dos Equis here. It's a tradition, but a tradition without a set date or event or anything. It's just kind of somebody shows up with 2 bombers of Dos Equis, and it's, ooh!
It's very happenstance.
Yeah.
And you can't buy one without buying 2. That's just kind of the rule.
Right. I mean, that's just how it is.
It is. We just call it, we just say, well, I've got some interesting beer today. Oh, I know exactly what you've got.
You don't say. So
cheers, man.
Cheers, man. You've got some tchotchkes, some new tchotchkes for us, and I'm real excited about these. These are cool as crap.
I was a kid in a candy store when these things showed up. So I went online because I wanted to make a sticker because we love stickers. We like decorating your cooler. I love to decorate my kegerator. We like stickers on the back windshield, trucks and muscle cars. And so I made a sticker. And it's the PETM. Like it's almost like the destination white oval, just
white oval,
black.
or the people who do like the marathons and stuff that say 26.
Oh, right. So I ran way too far, or like way even farther than that sticker. Yeah, it's the white horizontal oval like destination / I ran somewhere sticker,
and we're just giving them away. They call me Giveaway Bob.
Yeah, because Bob's giving them away. What we'd like for you to do is tweet us or email us or Facebook us or heart us on the Periscope or whatever it is you want to do. Make sure that it lasts forever.
Grab our attention.
An email is probably the best way for it to last forever. But I'll be happy to send you a sticker if you just ask for one. That's all it takes.
That's awesome. So we want to see the sticker all over the place.
Right, and that's the condition. The condition is, if you get a sticker, you have to take a picture and post it on at least Twitter. We'd love for you to put it on Instagram and Facebook as well. But tag us, tag the podcast handle with a picture of where you put your sticker.
Yep, and I just put mine on the back of my truck. You periscoped it. We sent out a picture on the Twitter. I'll tell you what, if you can see my truck, stop me. I'll give you $20.
Just doling out, not Benji's 20s.
Yeah, why not? So last time we talked, you and I both listened to the last podcast. We had 468 followers on our way to 500. We were confident at that point we could get there, even though I had told you were crazy beforehand. Then it was becoming a reality. It has not only become a reality, but surpassed that reality up to 616. So we wanted to start this thing off by thanking every one of you for following along on the podcast and making us feel like we're actually adding something to the conversation here.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly it makes us feel good. We want to generate something that people would want to listen to, but it's obvious that people are listening because of the interaction we're having. I actually got to speak to at Over the Wall Race on the phone today before I came down here.
Yeah, that's real cool.
And we talked about some of the ins and outs of the digital logistics of doing podcasts and getting them hosted and where they end up or where they go and how people consume them. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for everything. I mean, we're having so much fun with this that we are just sort of super impressed that we would get this much attention so quickly.
So the first thing we got to do, and in our new tradition, lineup, whatever you want to call it, of getting straight into NASCAR, I guess we're about 6 minutes and 20 seconds in this time, but hey, doing our best here. It's not 13 minutes. But the first thing, the voice of NASCAR, I don't have a hat on, but if I did, hats off. Barney Hall has gone to the great racetrack in the sky this past, I think, 2 weeks. And he's one of those guys. When I saw his name, I was like, I recognize that name. And then you go look him up on YouTube or whatever to get a soundbite, and you go, that's the guy. That is NASCAR.
He's the lead. He was the lead radio play-by-play announcer for like 45 years or something crazy. And he's the guy that can tell you the whole race, everything that's happening. He can get excited. And like he never even changes pitch or tone or speed of delivery. Demeanor. Like he's just as cool as anybody from Wilkes County, North Carolina ought to be. I mean, it's the kind of guy that can start talking. You just go, oh, I need to listen to that guy.
Yep, and I mean, just his voice is what I think of if I'm thinking about listening to NASCAR on the radio. It's that voice. It's that smooth talk. It's he's doing the commentating. Everybody else is kind of doing the play-by-play and stuff. And, a tough loss for the NASCAR family. But hats off to him. He was 80-something. 83. I wanted to say 3. 83 years old. I was surprised he was actually that old considering how recently I've even heard him talk. So
right. I think I had mentioned at some point that he'd been retired from like week to week NASCAR duty for a couple years, but that wasn't even true. He's only been retired about 18 months.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, Barney Hall is the radio voice of NASCAR or the voice of NASCAR. You don't need to add the adjective radio. He was NASCAR.
So you had a conversation with somebody just to show how far this podcast has come along and how far Twitter is getting us and everything. Tell us about how you had a conversation with Ed Clark, the president of Atlanta Motor Speedway. What happened there?
Well, it all started out of me misbehaving on Twitter.
Well,
with the podcast handle, which is sometimes that's what it takes. I don't get dirty or foul on our podcast handle, but I will get pointed at times.
Sure.
And I'll ask or I'll challenge things that I think we are in agreement that we don't like.
Yep.
Like winter races at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So what happened was the Atlanta Motor Speedway updates Twitter handle reached out to me via DM and sort of asked me, hey, what's going on? You're scatterbombing us with a bunch of negative stuff. And they didn't get that direct, but it was like, what's going on? So I wrote them a dissertation on, as far as direct messages go. I think it was probably 200 or 300 words in a direct message about what was pissing us off. Mm-hmm. And the response from Atlanta Motor Speedway Updates Twitter handle was, do you have time to speak to President Ed Clark? Would you be willing to do that?
And the answer when they say, do you have time to speak with the president of the racetrack, the answer is yes. What time?
Yeah,
I'll be there.
I mean, the crazy thing is probably 8 years ago or so, I was going to Thursday Night Thunder over the summer with David when I was still living in Fayetteville, and we would just go over there and have a couple beers and watch a couple Legends and Bandolero races, and Ed Clark raced in it. He had a Legends car, and he had this crazy open wheel thing that I can never remember the name of that usually only had like 3 or 4 cars show up for. And so I knew of Ed Clark, as long ago as 8 years, and so the idea that I would get to speak with him was super cool.
Right.
It was like, yeah. And then, he sent me a direct email saying, how does 1 o'clock on Monday work for you? And I was like, yes.
I've just canceled everything.
I said, I just put it in my work Outlook calendar. I'd want it, yes. And so we talked just a little bit over 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I want to tell you something, y'all. That's a race fan first and foremost. Ed Clark is a race fan.
It's good to hear.
And he sounds like we do. He's from Georgia. And
it's good to hear.
He's all about the racing. So everything that I had to say that was bothering me was also bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really cool things about this new 5-year contract NASCAR is signing with racetracks that we're going to have, we know there's 5 more races at Atlanta Motor Speedway, because one of our biggest fears, without going down the rabbit hole, are we going to lose Atlanta altogether?
Right.
Is Atlanta going away because the amount of people in the seats and the amount of people in the campground suggests that it's not the same financial product it used to be.
Sure.
So one of the cool thing is they get to negotiate year over year for a date. So there is a chance that next year we won't be racing on February 26th.
Right.
So hearing some of the details about why those decisions were made, how it relates to their TV contract and that sort of thing, was very interesting and appeasing, and almost to the point where you and I had a conversation about where we stand on attending that race.
Yep, we did. And our conversation was, we're kind of day-to-day, and then now it's, I knew it would happen like this. The closer it gets to, but especially with your conversation and everything, it gets you get the itch, man. You just get the itch, and you're going, I gotta go. I gotta go to this thing. So,
well, it's right down the road, and we haven't been to a race since September 4th.
Right. So it's been a while.
And also, between that time, I think we went from 40 Twitter followers to 616.
Yes.
We have people who want to interact with us. We want to show up at a tweet up, pass out stickers, shake hands, take pictures, hold babies, drink beer, and see what this new thing's about. And we're moving on up, and we love racing. It's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how mad I am. I love the sport.
So help me remember a little later today. This is totally off topic for podcasts, I guess. Today is the renewal deadline for Darlington. And Ooh. I just need to go ahead and buy the tickets. So
yeah, I think that's
help me remember on that
now, especially now that we know our producer's tied up.
Right. So we're good.
So we can get the campground chief of police to be the producer at Darlington
for sure.
We did last time.
Once again. So brings us to the big elephant in the room this week with Tony. And
the one we didn't expect to be in the room.
We have a whole slew of topics that we're deferring to next week as we're sitting here having to discuss Tony. And just to give sort of the background for folks, Tony and some friends, Ray Evernham, I think Rusty was there, Jeff Gordon was there, some other folks were there.
Greg Biffle.
They were out just in dune buggies, racing around, just BSing out in the sand dunes.
Yeah, there was 9 or 10 of them just goofing off.
And they ended up, Tony got separated from the group, and he ran off and was hitting some dunes and stuff. Ended up hitting one that was, I guess, a little taller than expected on the other end, and came down and essentially bottomed out the shocks on the race car, which when the shocks bottom out, your body's shocks kick in. And his shocks were, at that time, his spine. And he had a L1. It sounds really bad. I don't want to get too crazy into it, but pretty much has shattered one of his vertebrae on the bottom there.
Yeah, they call it a burst fracture,
right?
Because there's several fragments, and they kind of expand as a result of the impact. So it does look like a sunburst.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, it's named purely for what it looks like.
He was separated from the group for about 90 minutes, they're saying, and somebody came up over the hill and told him, hey, your buddy's down there, and he looks pretty hurt. You might want to go have a look. The first thing I thought was, imagine being that guy, the guy that, I don't know if he knows who these people are, but if you see racing legend Tony Stewart laying on the ground, and then you go tell some other people, and it happens to be Ray Evernham and Rusty Wallace and Jeff Gordon and Greg Biffle, I don't know if he knew who he was talking to, and it sounded like, at least from that interview or the details that we have, that he had no idea who these people were.
It's likely that the guy that first saw Tony doesn't know who any of these people are.
Right.
I mean, that's a really good chance he doesn't know any.
Right. But he's out there on the sand dunes, which means he likes racing cars. Tony's one of the most recognizable. If it's Ray Evernham on the ground over there, nothing against Ray, but I'm not sure I mean, I would notice him, but he's certainly less recognizable. Tony's one of the most recognizable guys in the sport, so I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit on it. Imagine being that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think if you've heard of NASCAR at all, if you paid any attention, then Tony Stewart is likely one of the people that you would know. Like, if there's 5 people you asked me to write down on a sheet of paper and say, people that aren't NASCAR fans know who this guy is, Tony's probably on that list.
Right. 5 people. Now you got my head running. Like Dale Jr., you're going to know Jimmy Johnson. Danica Patrick. Jeff Gordon, who's obviously not, but Tony, up there.
That's your 5 right there.
That's your 5. So ended up, he's off to the hospital and all that. They find out it's that compound. I keep saying compound, right? This is the first time I said it. Burst fracture.
Yeah.
Ends up, they're not releasing a whole lot of information right now, and because they're not releasing much information, I had texted with you and I'd said, I think this is it. I don't think Tony's going to be in a Sprint Cup car ever again. But they come back and they say, here's what the issue is, and he's having the surgery and stuff. So, of course, they're interviewing doctors who do surgery on that same type of thing. And they say, this is minimum 3 months, maximum, not maximum, but possible to be back in a car in 6 months. Oh, yeah, producer just poured her another glass of wine over there. Glug. So,
hey, it's part of the show. You're not allowed to participate in the show if you ain't drinking.
That's true. And it don't have to be alcoholic, as our friend Matt Bishop saw, but, got to have something in the hand.
That's right. He had a Mountain Dew or something like
Mountain
that.
Dew, I think, studying for his exams. So, anyway, we're talking about 6 months to get back. It raises a lot of questions. And I told you beforehand I had 3 questions. You added one onto there, and we'll get to that one. So, my 3 questions plus 1, so the 4 questions. First question is what people are hitting Twitter all over and hitting up NASCAR. And is NASCAR going to give Tony a waiver? My answer to that is this is as cut and dry and easy an answer as there is. No, he's not going to get a waiver. And the reason that I think that, or that I believe that, is that, number one, this is different from what Kyle Busch had last year, because Kyle Busch was in a NASCAR-sanctioned race and hit a wall that was unprotected. In other words, NASCAR goofed, messed up, and now one of their drivers is hurt. They got to grant this guy a waiver. We're talking about a guy who was out on his own, personal, etc., and we even said that. We said it on the podcast. Would your mind change? And McGee said it on Twitter. Would your mind, or would you say the same thing if it was a personal thing? And McGee, I remember, very succinctly said, no. Like,
yeah.
It would
He's
not
really
be the same.
good at a one-word answer sometimes.
Right. And so I think this opens up a can of worms. So if you give Tony this waiver, then who are you going to give the waiver to next? Or if somebody else hurts themselves not quite as bad, are you going to give them the waiver? Or somebody hurts herself as bad and they're not not one of the elite, obviously Hall of Famer first ballot as soon as he's eligible. At what point do you draw that line, and are you doing favorites and all that? I don't think NASCAR has put themselves in a situation where they can even give him a waiver on this in this situation.
So here, thought in my head the whole time you were talking. I was listening, but I wanted to develop not necessarily a point of contention, but let's just have a thought.
Okay.
So NASCAR was completely prepared to give Brian Vickers a waiver because he had a heart condition none of his own doing.
Right.
Is that different than Tony getting injured goofing off in a dune buggy?
Well,
it seems like it.
We don't know with Brian Vickers because it didn't happen, right?
Right, he never got healthy enough.
Right.
But he was granted the waiver. He just never came back.
I think it's different. I hate it. And by the way, I hate it. I hate it that that's the case or that has to be the case. I'm not rooting for this. I think it's awful. But I don't see a situation where NASCAR can come back now and say, "Oh yeah, you're cleared to race for the championship at this point."
I think that is a logical argument, and because of all the things that we've complained about NASCAR in the 32 previous episodes, and I'm going to continue today, because it feels like inconsistency from NASCAR, guarantee you they're going to give him a waiver.
I think that, we're going to have another conversation if and when that happens. I think that's a tough deal at that point because now the hypotheticals open up. If you close it down right here, well, there's at least some line. We don't know exactly where the line is. It's somewhere in between Kyle Busch getting hurt at the NASCAR track and Tony Stewart getting hurt on his own, and there's a clear delineation there. But now if you grant this, where's a delineation? Where's a whatever word I'm trying to look for? Where's that line at on the back end?
So the tidbit that I would add is, where was the line at Richmond with Truex and Gordon and Boyer on who gets in the chase based on some really strange event?
You're right. There was no line. They invented a line or invented a rule. You're exactly right.
They had 13 drivers in a 12-driver chase. This is why I think we're going to see NASCAR make decisions based on their own personal interests versus taking a stance on a rule book issue.
I think it's real hard for them to do it, but we'll see, and we'll definitely react. We know that.
Well, that's the beauty of this thing.
And opinion-wise, I don't think they should either, by the way. So I'll throw that one out there. I don't think they will, and I don't think they should.
Well, I was not sold on what to do about Kyle until he came back like 2 months before anybody expected him to.
Okay.
I would expect that if the consensus is, and I think this is probably why Mike Hembry would write a piece like that, interviewing that neurosurgeon from Pennsylvania who was used to be a open wheel racer
and raced against Tony. They said right
at the Rolex.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the reason why you write that piece is because you want to write the piece that Tony came back however much earlier than the experts said. I think it's a setup piece, and I'm not saying that the neurosurgeon is being extravagant, and I'm not saying Mike Hembry's being extravagant by interviewing him. What I'm saying is what we've seen with these super athletes, and I mean you can giggle all the way to the bank about Tony being a super athlete. He's a super mental athlete if he's not a super physical athlete.
Well, if you're in NASCAR, you're a super mental athlete, no doubt.
You're a super mental athlete, and you're a super circulatory athlete because of how well you have to process information and keep your body cool and make sure your brain doesn't shut off. So Tony is absolutely a super athlete. So what we've seen with these super athletes is they're able to find a place where like pain doesn't exist, and they can rehab in a way that pain doesn't matter, and the normal like obstacles to getting healthy again just don't seem to matter.
Okay.
So I would expect we would see Tony back sooner than experts would air quote predict.
Okay. Well, now they said they predict a year, or they say the normal person would be
the
a
commoner.
Year. The commoner would be a year. An athlete like him is 6 months, 3 months on the short time. We'll see where it goes from there.
Well, I'm thinking it's going to be similar to Kyle. I think we're going to see Tony at Charlotte for the 600.
Ooh, okay. So, I answered the question. Should NASCAR grant him the waiver?
I don't know. I'm waffling. I'm waffle. I don't want to offer an opinion. I'm just saying I think they will.
Okay. I I'm on the
I'm
other
too
side.
close. I
so
like
I'm-
Tony too much.
I do too, though.
Because that's why I don't want to give the opinion. It's like, oh, you're a homer. It's like, well, no, not really. I like what Tony's done for the sport. I want him. I want every possible good thing. It's like, why are you rooting for the Broncos in the Super Bowl? Because Peyton Manning winning a Super Bowl and galloping off into the sunset is a super cool sports story. We're going to get an ESPN 30 for 30 on that. We're not going to get an ESPN 30 for 30 on Cam dabbing.
Right. So, second question, and I'm glad we disagree on that one because now we'll have something to talk about. Second question, and I think this one's a bit more moot at this point because I wrote this question back when we didn't know how long it was going to be. And then the first thing we heard was...
We didn't even know what the injury was.
Right. First thing we heard was 6 months, and then you start reading in deeper. But I wrote this when I saw the 6-month thing. Does Tony come back this year? Will he be racing this year?
Absolutely.
And I agree with you now that we know more information that absolutely he'll be back this year. So I don't think it's worth getting into that one as much.
But there's a B part of that question.
And so ask it, and let's see if that's my question number 3.
Does this delay Tony's retirement?
Question number 3, does he come back next year? So that's,
I love it when we're on
the fist pump.
We're
Yep.
connected. It works.
Yep. Question number 3.
So the answer is no. And the reason is there's way too much momentum with sponsorship getting Clint Boyer into Tony's car. Mm-hmm. There's no way to delay that another year that doesn't make a complete mess of what they're trying to do this year.
I agree with you there, and I hate to agree with you because I don't think. I mean, Tony doesn't want to go out this way. Nobody wants him. And so, in my opinion, and here's what sucks about my opinion, is that
your opinion sucks.
Is that Tony's not coming back till? I mean, we're talking about like. I'm going to say the July 4th race at Daytona, the 400.
Which makes the least sense. But you're right. That's the time frame we're talking
Right, I'm talking about time frame. He doesn't come back till the midway point in the season. He's
for sure don't come back at Daytona.
And I'm saying he's yeah. But and I'm saying, around that time frame is what I'm saying. I'm saying also that he doesn't get a waiver, and I don't think he's going to really perform at a great level at this point. He hasn't after his last injury. I don't think he's, there's so much going on in his head and all that stuff too. And this last year, 2 years hadn't been very good for him. I don't want to see him go out in a sunset like that.
What happened to that phone?
Don't worry about it.
It's all
right.
good.
So
I don't want to see him. I don't want to see that, but I think that's what's going to happen, and I hate it.
I'm going to kick it back too, because this is where I thought we would get to.
Okay,
is if Tony doesn't make it back to July, there's like a 0.0% chance he would even qualify for the chase.
Right.
So for me, my opinion about whether NASCAR would give him the waiver is totally dependent upon when he could come back and his performance, because I don't think he's going to make it back in time, and I don't think the performance is there for it to matter. None of that's going to matter, which is easy. Why it's easy for me to take the jab at NASCAR to say Tony moves the needle enough, they're going to give him the waiver if he can figure out if the possibility exists, the way we've already seen the blueprint that Kyle Busch put forth with winning 4 races and totally. I mean, he scored more points than some of the guys that made the chase, and he missed like 9 of them, or whatever, 11, 12. I think Charlotte's the 12th race, but I don't think those things all line up. So that's why I don't think Tony will be a championship contender. But if he comes back soon enough and he wins a couple races, damn sure he's getting the waiver.
So do you think that would be retroactive at that point, though? Because they got to announce when he comes back. You can't be like, oh, well, he's won a couple races. Yeah, we'll go ahead and let him have it. I mean, that's kind of screwy.
No. They'll have to say it when he comes back.
Right. So it does depend on when he comes back.
Because
I think we agree on that.
They need the needle movement. The thing is, though, here's the other side of that coin, is because it's his last race at each one of these tracks, and each one of these races, there's going to be an elevated television audience, and there's going to be an elevated attendance totally by Tony Stewart fans who are trying to sort out with, I want to see my guy race his last race at the place that I go watch races.
Right.
And
means we've already seen him at his last race at Atlanta, if what we're saying is true here.
100%. 100%. And that's why I did the Throwback Thursday from 06.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure with all the races that we've been to, I think that's the only Cup race we've seen Tony win.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy because he's almost won 50 of them.
Right. And we've been to a bunch.
And we've been to a boatload of them.
So that's a comeback next year. I'm not seeing it. You're not seeing it. And I hate it because I think it's riding off into a unceremonious sunset, which I would like to see more a blaze of glory like Jeff Gordon's done.
Jeff Gordon's win at Martinsville was so huge.
Which, let's talk about that. Let's take a slight diversion and talk about that win in terms of how Martinsville is marketing right now.
Oh my gosh, I lost my cool.
I lost my cool when I saw you lose your cool on Twitter.
So Martinsville, the Twitter handle. Actually, it wasn't the Twitter handle. I believe it was somebody that we follow on Twitter. Took a picture of their brochure that said, "Go ahead and get your tickets for the October race to Martinsville," and it was a picture of a lap down car wrecking the leader. We all know who those people are.
Is that right? Well,
instead of Jeff Gordon winning a grandfather clock to go out as an all-timer, 93rd win in Sprint Cup.
It made me sick. I stared at it for a couple minutes.
I wanted to puke.
Yeah, it was. Are you kidding me? This is what we're advertising right here. Is this silly drama? This silly. I mean, we already talked about where we stand.
Well, what we're advertising is arguably the most egregious behavior in the modern history of the sport, with a lap down car,
and it's something that
hadn't had an incident during that race with the driver in question, dumping and ending the leader's day.
And
there seems to be lost on the people that are like, no, paybacks. Paybacks. That's part of the sport. You need to break this down a little bit more and understand what the magnitude of this was.
And the sport said we don't like it either, and brought the hammer down on Matt Kenseth.
2-race suspension.
Right. And so the sport doesn't like it, but a division or a wing, I know they're not NASCAR necessarily, I don't want to say affiliated. Obviously they're affiliated, but they're not owned and operated, and they don't have to answer to NASCAR when they do that. But, man, that was real disappointing to see. Here's what we're advertising is why you come to Martinsville. Whereas it should have been, like you said, Jeff Gordon coming across the line or celebrating in pit lane.
Jumping in midair into his team.
Yeah.
Here's this 44-year-old man who's so ecstatic you'd think he was a toddler got his first teddy bear. Mm-hmm. But it's a guy celebrating what was a super illustrious career. I mean, he's a top 3 in all time of NASCAR.
Well, for sure.
How is that moment? Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say, okay, so maybe their marketing team would pull me aside and say, Andrew, you do know that Jeff Gordon's never going to race at Martinsville again, don't you? Yeah, correct. But he is going to call the race this spring.
Yeah, or they were
and
cheering
the next
harder
spring,
for him. I don't know.
and the next spring, like.
We
have volume over there on the old. Yeah, no,
we
it's
break
cool.
fourth wall every once in a while here.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
All right, let's bring it back. Question number 4, Tony. We've already talked about NASCAR waiver. Is he coming back this year? Is he coming back next year? Last thing is, we know he's not going to be in the Daytona 500. We know he's not going to be in at least the first 4 or 5 races. 8 races, 10, 12, whatever, however far we go.
Could be 16.
But who's going to be in that car? And I struggled to answer this because everybody that I'm thinking of already has affiliations. We talked about this in pre-show. People who have affiliations elsewhere, people who are already signed up for something else, or people who are just not eligible, not that they're ineligible completely, but that they have allegiances with other either maker manufacturers or sponsors or whatever.
We have like 3 different layers of what people want to see when we have this situation where a prominent driver in a good ride needs a backup. And some of it borders on, I don't want to put too many people down, but some of it borders on idiocy, like people reaching out to Mark Martin and Jeff Burton on Twitter and Jeff Gordon saying, well, they should clearly fill in. That's the right. Come on, man.
Mark Martin's tweet was funny. I don't race cars anymore.
Yes, I am not a race car driver anymore. Thanks. Moving on.
Yeah.
I think what it boils down to is you're not going to be able to pull an up-and-coming driver from a different manufacturer because they've already got a glide path. So Chris Buescher is not the answer, y'all.
Right.
You're going to need somebody who has Cup experience, which is, that eliminates half of the potential field.
Right.
Because they're going to have to get in and not wreck the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what it boils down to is Chevy drivers who have Cup experience.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 in mind for me, both happen to now drive for Junior Motorsports because they're able to bring sponsorship. Unfortunately for Regan Smith, he wasn't able to do that to stay in a competitive ride in the Xfinity Series. However, he did get in Tommy Baldwin's ride. Digress. I think the 2 drivers it's going to come down to is either Elliott Sadler or Justin Allgaier, who are both Junior Motorsports Chevrolet drivers.
Well, let's talk about
committed to a full season Xfinity, which means the only thing they have to sort out is the non-companion races that happen in between the stretch where Tony's out.
Right. So, let's talk about them. Elliott Sadler, former Cup driver. He was actually kind of surprised when they said you have to sign up for either a Cup championship or an Xfinity nationwide at the time championship, and he said, I'm doing nationwide. And it was like, whoa, wow, Elliott Sadler he's a Cup driver.
Yeah.
But he's been around. He's always been, he's been around as long as I've been following the sport, and I think he is a solid choice for that ride. Although, he's got his own thing going on in Xfinity.
Yeah, well, so he has One Main Financial as a backer. Mm-hmm. They've been very committed to him. It was Citibank before, when I think they might have been with Greg Biffle or somebody like that. But they when they went to One Main Financial, they were with Elliott Sadler at RCR, and he won 4 races. Or actually, it was KHI initially in that 33 ride. Then he went to RCR, won some races. That partnership dissolved, and he went to Roush. He went to Gibbs first. Ran a couple of seasons, performed very well, finished in single digit in points, like 3rd, 4th, 5th, right in there. And then went to Roush, same thing. And then win, pretty high finish in the points. So it's like now people are like, well, Elliott Sadler's washed out because he hadn't been able to win. He hadn't even been able to win the Xfinity, right? Oh, my God. Now he's transferring again over to Junior Motorsports because he has the sponsorship to carry a car for the full season and compete for the championship, which they absolutely needed with Chase going to Cup, by the way. That was a backfill that Junior Motorsports had to have to keep the team as strong as it was.
Right.
So, to me, it makes sense to put Elliott Sadler in that car.
Let's talk about Justin Allgaier. So Allgaier has always been a C driver, I would say, if you're playing fantasy NASCAR, and he's in the Cup car, he's going to be one of the C drivers. What is compelling about bringing him in?
Similar but different to Sadler. He's not won Cup races the way Elliott has, but he did compete for, I think, 2 full seasons with formerly Phoenix Racing, that is now H. Scott in the 51. He does have the sponsorship the way Elliott does. That's not going to matter, by the way, because Tony Stewart's car is fully sponsored. So he's got Cup experience in maybe not a great car.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of comes down to, what do we think we can learn if we're SHR? What do we think we can learn from Justin driving the car, and what are the promotional opportunities that he provides as a driver that helps us fill the gap versus what Elliott what do we think we can learn from Elliott driving the car, and what are the promotional opportunities that he offers?
Right. So, in the same spirit that I asked the question before, because we're a fan podcast, man, we gotta hold some opinions here and not just be media guys who tell you what all the options are and go, I don't know, I'm just analyzing. Who's it going to be?
No, to me, it's Elliott Sadler. If I'm running that team, it's Elliott Sadler, especially with Bass Pro on the car, and we know Elliott Sadler is a huge advocate of hunting. He's a Southerner from Virginia. He got a great accent.
I can't do it. I always
and he's actually, and people don't realize this, he was a college athlete. He was a college basketball player. He's a tremendous athlete. He's bigger too, which may help them learn something about chassis development. You couldn't learn with Justin Allgaier because he's so tiny. And if they made any changes to the chassis based on Allgaier's weight and stature, they would have to unlearn that when Tony gets in the car.
Right.
Now Tony committed to getting healthier, and we saw that at media days. He looked about 30 pounds lighter, I think, than he finished 2015.
Oh,
but he's still a bigger dude.
By the way, I was going to say, one thing that doesn't help Tony about getting a waiver is that he just poo-pooed all over Brian France a few weeks ago.
He sure did. You're right.
That might hurt the chances a little bit.
It depends on how big Brian France's vote is. Like, if everybody else gets one vote and he gets like 30,
right,
then that might be an issue.
Yeah.
Or maybe Brian France took it on the chin? Constructively, and was like, you know what? You're right.
I'm not going to say you're right, but okay, that's Tony being Tony. I'm just going to let it go.
Or the sport needs that. It needs the back and forth because what we've seen in NASCAR is the gag. The gag order seems to be a little bit stronger. But then, in the other professional sports, you're not supposed to talk about the referees if you're a competitor or you get fined. So I don't know how we could make that analogous because there is some like Venn diagrammy, overlappy type stuff that, NASCAR is not necessarily different from other sports in that respect. That they don't want you poo-pooing the sport. But if you can't question leadership's decisions, what do you have? You have a dictatorship. You have I almost said fascist. That is not appropriate.
Fascist.
It's not a cuss word, but that's not the correct.
We've already talked about using Big Lebowski quotes on the podcast, so I think that's where that comes from.
Well, there was an adjective in front of it when he said.
There was another.
I think somebody got donked in the head with a coffee cup.
So that's the 4 questions. NASCAR waiver coming back this year, coming back next year, and who's in the car. I think we've answered all those to the best of our ability, and we'll see what happens. And like you said, I think a lot of this depends on when he's ready to race. And when he's ready to race, we're going to see the answer to those first 3 questions. We're going to see the answer to that last question. It's got to be soon. Daytona, 24 day or 20. What? I don't remember. I've actually been out.
My guess is they will choose to not enter the Sprint Unlimited. Which is going to run Saturday night, the 13th.
Yep.
But if they're still undecided, what am I trying to get to? This is way too much pause.
It's radio, man.
I don't know what to do.
I'll sit here and do clowns.
I don't know what to do. Like they're going to have to. I think realistically, they probably need to know by month. Like they probably already do know. They probably need to announce it on Tuesday when NASCAR typically has releases of information as a group. I think I would suspect there wouldn't be any reason why they wouldn't run the Sprint Unlimited. But they got another driver. Another driver.
All right, so let's move on. Fox ran kind of a crazy commercial during the NFC Championship game that kind of got you fired up a little bit, but I saw it and I thought kind of what you thought after thinking about it for a day. That doesn't make any sense, does it? You sat on it for a day and came up to the same conclusion that I was at as well, which was, you know what, this is good for the sport to see this. It was a commercial that Daytona Day is what they called it.
Yeah, and Daytona Day.
You can tell it was aimed at the football crowd. It's you could have put any game day for football on it, and it would have been the same commercial, just, girls jumping around dancing, guys throwing around football or whatever it is, and tailgating and laughing and, drinking out of red Solo cups and all that. Very much aimed at the same audience that is watching this football game. I thought it was a good idea. I know you at first were ticked off or whatever you want to call it, but came around a bit.
Well, so we saw it online. Somebody posted it 2 or 3 days before it ran. Mm-hmm. Somebody like Jeff Gluck or somebody like that said, here's the commercial. This is what's going to run during the championship game. So I actually didn't see it on television.
Okay.
I watched it online. And, of course, my knee-jerk reaction and what I went to Twitter with, which I'm not going to go back and delete because I think it's actually good.
Well, it might as well live there in the moment.
This is bullspit. This alienates your current fan base. But then I thought about it for a day, and I listened and read what people had to say, and I thought, actually, this is perfect because this commercial was designed to piss me off.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that it's aimed at an audience that I don't necessarily understand in a lot of ways, which is, the millennials, the Gen Y and the Gen Z. That's what we need in NASCAR, and that's the next step. That's how you take this sport to the next step is you get Gen Y and Gen Z.
Mm-hmm. And the same type of people that are watching that game. So I just finished that Dos Equis, so you've got a few beers.
I think it's
here.
fair that you beat me to it because I was going to choose that one, but just so we can get the
popping open the
red
noise.
IPA. Yeah, I'm going to get into the Red Hair Gangway IPA.
Very nice. So
as soon as I just down this
here's something
interesting beer.
Here's something. Every time that I hear it, I'm happy. We've talked about Michael Waltrip over and over again with his race team, with him having to shut down the thing. But no matter what happens in the cheating stuff we've talked about, something brings a smile to my face when I read the headline. Michael Waltrip will be racing in the Daytona 500, and there's something about that to me, and I just got goosebumps again. That I don't know if it's a throwback thing. I don't know what it is. I really like it. He's going to be with BK Racing in the number 83 that we called the double cheeseburger or double Whopper ride. That was one of your quotes on one of the early.
I said something about slow as a double Whopper.
Right. That was
that's my best joke of the podcast life span so far. Yeah. Well, no, I totally agree with you because for all the goofiness on television and all the shenanigans with the race team, Michael Waltrip genuinely loves NASCAR. So Michael Waltrip is genuinely good for NASCAR.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about his Fox Walk, whatever they call it. His
grid walk was awesome.
Yep. And so everything
sometimes it wasn't good. Most of the time it was hilarious.
Right.
Especially when he dumped like a Taco Bell taco into Denny Hamlin's car.
So I'm excited. The producer's over here. She can't breathe now. She's laughing. Where's that video she said she's looking for? So Michael Waltrip in the 500 again. As many times as he wants to race it, I will be happy to see that he's racing it.
I'm with you, and so I'm going to do a quick recircle because we didn't hit question 5 about Tony. Is since he's missing his last 500, we're going to see Tony race another 500.
Yes.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Unequivocally, yes.
We will. Because we did talk about, does he come back next year? No.
Well, especially when you're allowed to run a development car.
Right.
They're going to do it.
Yep. So, that's bringing us toward the end here. We just had college signing day in football, switching sports over a little bit.
Huge deal especially in the Southeast. I mean, I know it's big and all over the West Coast, Big Ten, the Big 12, ACC, SEC, college football rules, especially on Saturdays. I mean, NFL obviously has some pretty significant numbers, but they only have 32 teams. Division I college football has 128, and I believe Division FCS football championship series has like 300. So college football is a pretty big deal, and so lots of people were either excited or disappointed on Wednesday, which is our yearly let's let an 18 or 17-year-old rule the world and pick a hat. But I know football fans are excited, so we thought we'd touch on it briefly.
Shout out to them, and speaking of shout-outs, oh, no, man, I was so smooth right there, too.
Did you F it up?
And then I forgot to
You bleeped it up.
put the thing on. Yeah, it was one of my bleep ups or whatever you want to call it. Here goes.
Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah, you know our deals there. Let's start out with some special shout outs to some Periscope folks that have been following along with us. So the whole time, Julie and Mike. Julie is at Julie Julie number 4 BOS. Julie for boss. And,
she's one of the ones I've interacted with on the Twitter.
Oh, sweet. Hey,
Yeah.
Julie.
I think she was the one that sent us an email when I asked for people for about the sticker. Julie, you're going to get your sticker, honey. I just got to get envelopes and stamps, and then they're going out.
Cheers to you, Julie. And Mike Ellis. Mike Ellis is on. Mike Dean at Mike Dean Ellis.
Awesome. Yeah, he runs an iRacing podcast, he has an iRacing podcast, but it's more about, just enjoying iRacing, which is cool. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate you being on the Periscope.
Being a loyal Periscope watcher there. Speaking of the iRacing, a few other, or one of our shout-outs today, Justin Michael, who is an iRacer and actually does his stuff on Twitch. If you're not familiar with Twitch, it's a place where folks go to video themselves playing video games. And I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard. Why am I going to sit here and watch somebody watch video game or play video games? And then I started watching some stuff, and now I'm all into it, and I'm watching like half an hour a day is watching people play video games. So shout out to Justin Michael. It's twitch.tv/jmichael99.
Yep, he had asked. I asked him if he wanted to shout anything else. He just said the Twitch site. I've heard a lot about Twitch because of all the different things that I'm listening to in the comedian podcast world. I haven't messed with it yet, but I guarantee you it's the kind of thing I could get into because I actually like watching y'all play video games because I suck at them so much that it's fun.
Well, so you're like, this is stupid, and then you see one, and it's like, all right, here's a guy beating Super Mario, the first one, faster than anybody else ever has, and he did it yesterday. Watch this, and you're like, I gotta watch that. That was my life as a 5-year-old.
Right.
So yeah.
Watch this guy beat a game in 17 seconds that you invested like 3 years worth of awake time in.
No kidding. Our second shout out, Jack Shalowski, and I probably messed it up. Sorry about that, but it's at SSKI Jack.
Yeah, Jack. So there was another one of the Briar's nests I got myself, or Hornet's nest I got myself into on Twitter this week was about the available content for NASCAR consumers in terms of television and what feeds reach what audience and who has access to broadcast TV versus cable, blah, 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 blah. And Jack saw this conversation taking place, and he sent us a link to one of these sports car series that he participates in. And they apparently all of their content is streamed online all the time, always. So I thanked him for providing access to something that a lot of the people that follow our podcast and follow our Twitter handle and maybe would have seen based on like the orange cone or somebody else being attached to the tweet wouldn't have seen. So he reached out to me via direct message to say thanks, because the typical response I think he gets from NASCAR commenters on Twitter is certainly more negative than what I provided, because I said thanks. I appreciate you giving us another outlet for a race car, because that's the way we feel about it.
Our last shout out, and I'm going to see if I can play the soundbite. Hopefully they don't cuss during it, because I just brought it up. There it is. We have a round of applause, and I'm probably blowing the speakers out there. Sorry for anybody listening there. Round of applause for our 600th follower, man. 600 follower.
600.
Jamie Hunter at Hunter Husker. HunterHusker. We really appreciate you listening.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And I would guess.
Oh, no.
That
it plays the womp, womp.
I'm getting walked over on the womp, womp. I would guess that you're probably a Nebraska Cornhuskers fan, so I'm sure you appreciated the the college signing day shout out. Hopefully for you, your team signed a bunch of really good football players who are going to be good enough to stay in school as well.
Yeah, so let's start closing out, man. Any last thoughts? Any issues?
Goodness gracious, I don't know what we all decide. What did we decide we were going to push next week? Don't go through it.
We've got a lot still to talk about.
We got a ton. We're going to talk about Furniture Row going to Toyota and what that strategy looks like and why.
Mm-hmm. Ryan McGee wrote a very poignant article that we both have some opinions on, and it's called "This Will Be Great for the Sport." Go out there and read that, y'all, and we'll talk about it next week.
McGee's a great writer. I think at some point, it may not even be the next episode, but there's going to be continued discussion about how we feel about Cup guys driving in the Xfinity Series and the trucks maybe, but mostly the Xfinity. That seems to get people fired up.
We got some sponsorship stuff, too. A few guys with some new sponsorships and some interesting stuff. Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer. So a lot in the bag for next week. Let's
faux show.
Let's see if I can go ahead and bring it up. There she is.
Oh, wow. We're for real ending this thing.
We're for real through the end of this. We hope y'all enjoyed it. And we'll, I've had a blast.
Hey, one last shout out to the Orange Cone for following the podcast handle. I appreciate all the interaction last week. It's not always been great, but it's been interesting and entertaining. I think we've learned something, and we appreciate you following the podcast handle.
And once again, thanks to the producer, TheFriz11, who's been doing
Friz11,
our
all
live
lowercase
tweeting Twitter takeover during the podcast here. Appreciate you. And as always, I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace at Tailgate Mayor, and here with pregame engineer Andrew Sherwin at pregame ENG. And tell us about that G-Chat.
Yeah, that G-Chat is all lowercase, PETM podcast at gmail.com. I'm the co-host, Andrew Sherwin, at pregame ENG.
Y'all don't forget to email us, tweet us, or whatever, and get you your sticker.
Yeah, the stickers are available, y'all. You just need to interact with us. That's what it boils down to.
And we will.
Make me run out of stickers. That's what I'm asking
I
for.
hear you, man. And we will talk to y'all later. We'll talk to you next week for sure. Thanks for listening.
Thumbs up.